On an ordinary autumn weekend, I accepted my friend Tom's request to take care of their family dog and enjoy the tranquility of their spacious suburban home. Tom's family went on vacation, and as a college student, I always appreciated the opportunity to escape the hustle and bustle of campus life and enjoy some alone time. The house is located in a quiet small town, surrounded by golden autumn leaves, making it especially serene and beautiful. I met Tom in college, and we became close friends with no topic off limits. His family was also very welcoming to me, often inviting me to family gatherings. So, when Tom made this request, I didn't hesitate to accept. It wasn't just because I was willing to help a friend, but also because I loved that place filled with familial warmth and happy memories. When I arrived at Tom's house that afternoon, everything was as peaceful as usual. The house was filled with a warm atmosphere, family photos hung on the walls, and various small decorations were placed on the tables, each detail exuding the warmth of a home. I prepared food for the dog, then made myself dinner. After dinner, the dog and I played in the living room, enjoying the quiet time together. As night fell, I decided to go upstairs to sleep. Just as I was about to turn off the light, the dog suddenly became restless, staring out the window and barking nonstop. I tried to calm it down but felt a sense of unease myself. I went to the window to see what was disturbing it, but only saw darkness outside and the vague silhouettes of trees. Just when I was about to return to bed, a series of unusual activities broke the silence. First, the TV suddenly turned off by itself, followed by a series of rapid knocks on the window, as if something, or someone, was trying to get my attention. My unease grew, especially noticeable in the quiet night. I tried to convince myself it might just be the wind moving the branches or some small animal's prank. However, when I heard sounds of prying at the front door, I realized the situation might be more serious than I had thought. My heart raced, and I knew I had to stay calm. I walked to the staircase, staring down the dim hallway, trying to listen for those unsettling sounds. Then, another knock, more urgent and forceful than before. A cold breeze blew in from an unsecured window, bringing a chill. The dog's barking became more intense, its body tense, ready to pounce on any potential threat. I grabbed my phone, trembling, and dialed the police. During the call, I tried to keep my voice calm and clear, despite the fear inside. The operator told me the police were on their way and advised me not to confront any potential intruder alone. After hanging up, I quietly moved to the top of the stairs, cautious with every step to avoid making noise. My eyes were fixed on the front door, where the prying sounds continued, now accompanied by faint cursing. I realized the intruder might be just a few steps outside. The dog stood by my side, scared but seemingly offering me strength in its way. I clutched my phone, the only link to the outside world, and silently prayed for the police to arrive quickly. During this tense wait, I heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Soon, the blue glow of police lights shone through the curtains, lighting up the living room. The knocking and prying sounds suddenly stopped, replaced by the rapid footsteps and shouting of the police outside. The police quickly took control of the situation, catching the burglar who turned out to be a criminal active in the area. The secluded location and seemingly empty appearance of Tom's house had made it appear to be a perfect target. Reflecting on that night, my heart still raced. The experience made me acutely aware that even the most familiar and seemingly safe environments could hide unpredictable dangers. I felt an unprecedented gratitude for the safety of Tom's home and my own. It was not just a refuge, but a place where I could recover from the incident. When Tom returned, I briefly shared the events of that night with him. We both felt fortunate that I had come through the experience unharmed. It deepened our friendship and taught me to cherish every moment of peace and tranquility in life. It was a typical weekend night, and I, Alex, along with a few friends, were invited to Daniel's house for a game night. Daniel's place was nestled in a suburban corner, surrounded by a serene environment, with only the woods behind his yard whispering in the night breeze. We all sat around in the living room, laughter and the sound effects from the gaming console intermingling, creating a relaxed and joyful atmosphere. As the night deepened, our games became more intense. Daniel's mom had prepared pizza and chips for us, and we all ate and played, completely immersed in the joy of the night. Time flew unnoticed, and the clock on the wall pointed to midnight. We decided to take a break and snack on some treats. I stood up to head to the kitchen for some drinks. Walking through the hallway, I noticed the back door was slightly ajar, letting in a cool breeze that carried the fresh scent of the woods. Curious, I decided to step out into the backyard for some air. Pushing the door open, I stepped outside. The stars in the night sky twinkled, and the moon hid behind thick clouds, revealing only a hazy outline. I took a deep breath of the cool air, embracing the tranquility of the night. As I slowly walked along the path in the backyard, the rustling of the woods filled my ears. I tried to distinguish the sounds within the woods, but there was only the wind and the rustling of leaves. I felt an inexplicable peace, as if the entire world had come to a standstill. However, this tranquility didn't last long. Suddenly, I felt as though someone was watching me from behind. I spun around, only to find nothing but swaying tree shadows. I told myself it was just my imagination, but a sense of unease spread through me like vines. I decided to head back inside. When I tried to push the back door open, I found it was closed. I was sure I hadn't closed it, which struck me as very odd. I returned to the living room and shared the incident with my friends. Everyone found it a bit eerie, but we tried to rationalize it, suggesting it could have been the wind or someone accidentally closing the door. To lighten the mood, Daniel suggested we play a game of hide and seek with hidden objects. We dimmed the lights, and everyone armed with flashlights started searching for items Daniel had hidden beforehand. In a secluded corner, I found a set of unfamiliar keys lying quietly on an old table. The appearance of the keys unsettled me further, and I couldn't help but speculate about their origin. After the game, I decided to leave early. I bid my friends goodbye and set off home alone. The streets at night were eerily quiet, with only my footsteps and the distant barking of a dog breaking the silence. I quickened my pace, feeling as though someone was following me. Looking back, I saw only the empty streets and swaying tree shadows. I told myself not to be afraid, but my heartbeat accelerated involuntarily. I decided to take a detour to a neighbor's house, where I would feel safer. Knocking on the neighbor's door, a middle-aged man answered. I hastily explained my situation to him. He looked surprised but let me in and accompanied me outside to check. We walked around the street but didn't find anything unusual. Still feeling uneasy, the man reassured me, suggesting I might be overly nervous and perhaps it was just a lost animal or the wind that spooked me. He escorted me home and made sure I was safely inside before leaving. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind replayed the evening's events. I tried to convince myself it was all a coincidence, but the unease lingered. I decided to avoid going out alone at night in the future and to be more cautious about my safety. The next day, I went to Daniel's house early to share the previous night's events with him and our friends. We discussed possible explanations and concluded that the keys might have been left by a previous tenant, and there had been recent burglaries in Daniel's neighborhood. We realized that I might have inadvertently interrupted a burglar's plans, and the shadow could have been a misunderstanding. Even though we found an explanation, the experience left me shaken. From then on, I became more vigilant and cherished the time spent with friends even more. The midnight scare, though it turned out to be harmless, taught me that life is full of unexpected moments. We must always stay alert and protect our safety. It was supposed to be the highlight of our summer break, a weekend sleepover at Alex's house, nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the biggest event of the year was the annual block party. My friends and I had been planning this sleepover for weeks, a perfect escape from the mundane routines of school and family life. Besides Alex and me, there were 3 others: Jamie, Casey, and Sam. We were a close-knit group, bound by our love for video games, horror movies, and, admittedly, a penchant for exploring the slightly more sinister facets of our ordinary town. Alex's house was ideal for our little gathering. His parents were lenient. The basement was our designated haven, equipped with a sprawling couch, a decently sized TV, and what seemed like an endless supply of snacks. The backyard, though, was the house's most distinctive feature. It was massive, bordering a dense woodland that stretched far beyond sight. Local lore was ripe with tales of these woods, stories of figures seen moving in the twilight, of inexplicable lights weaving between the trees, and of paths that ventured too close to the tree line, never to return. Of course, to a group of teenagers, these stories only added an enticing edge to our adventure. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, our excitement was palpable. We had everything planned out: a marathon of the latest horror flicks, followed by a gaming session, and maybe, if we were daring enough, a little exploration of the famed woods under the cover of night. However, as darkness settled and the interior of the house bathed in the glow of artificial lights, a subtle unease began to take root in my stomach. It wasn't the movies. We'd sat through scarier stuff without batting an eye. Nor was it the gaming. If anything, the competition was more fierce and exhilarating than usual. It was when my gaze wandered to the windows overlooking the backyard, to the pitch black beyond the glass, that I felt it, a prickling sensation, as if we were being watched. Jamie, catching my distracted look, teased, "You scared already? We haven't even started the ghost stories yet." I forced a laugh, shaking off the feeling. "Just thought I saw something move out there," I lied, not wanting to admit that nothing had actually caught my eye. It was more the absence of movement, the oppressive silence, that unnerved me. The night wore on. Our initial bravado, fueled by the thrill of the movies and the adrenaline of our gaming victories, waned as the strange atmosphere of the house and its surroundings began to seep into our consciousness. The backyard, with its close proximity to the woods, suddenly felt less like an extension of Alex's home and more like a threshold to an unknown and uninviting world. It was Sam who, perhaps in an attempt to dispel the growing tension or maybe out of genuine curiosity, suggested, "Let's check out the woods. I mean, we're all here together. When else are we gonna have the chance?" Casey, ever the cautious one, hesitated. "I don't know, guys. Those stories about the woods, they've gotta come from somewhere, right?" But we were teenagers, emboldened by group dynamics and the desire not to appear fearful in front of each other. So, with flashlights in hand and a collective determination to prove our bravery, we approached the sliding glass door that led to the backyard. The moment we stepped outside, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The woods loomed ominously in the distance, a wall of darkness that promised unknown terrors. Yet, propelled by a mix of fear and excitement, we ventured closer to the tree-line. That's when we heard it, a snap, like a branch breaking underfoot, followed by a whisper so soft it was almost lost to the night air. We froze, flashlights darting in the direction of the sound, but nothing appeared. Alex, trying to maintain a semblance of control, joked, "Probably just a raccoon, guys. Let's not freak ourselves out over nothing." We might have believed him, had it not been for the crash that followed. It sounded like a heavy object being thrown against something solid, coming from the back of the garden, near where the woods began. This time, there was no mistaking the source of our fear. Without a word, we turned and ran back to the house, slamming the door shut behind us. Panting, hearts racing, we looked at each other, a silent agreement passing between us. We were in over our heads. The bravado that had carried us outside dissolved into a nervous energy that none of us could shake. We locked every door, closed every curtain, and huddled around the living room, trying to laugh it off. But the atmosphere had shifted irrevocably. Our laughter was tinged with anxiety, our glances towards the windows filled with apprehension. "Maybe we should call it a night," Casey suggested, a sentiment that was met with nods of agreement. The thrill of our planned adventures had been replaced by a desire for the safety of familiar surroundings, away from the unpredictable darkness of the woods. But as we began to settle down, finding comfort in the warmth of sleeping bags and the soft glow of night lights, I saw it, a shadow passing by the window. My heart stopped. "Guys," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "there's something outside." They all sat up, staring at me with wide, fearful eyes. "Are you sure?" Alex asked, his voice betraying his fear. I think so. It just went past the window," I replied, my gaze fixed on the glass pane that separated us from the outside world. After a moment of tense silence, Alex and I decided to investigate. We couldn't let our imaginations run wild, and if there was something or someone lurking in his backyard, we needed to know. The others protested, but curiosity and a need to protect our makeshift fortress drove us. Armed with flashlights, we cautiously stepped back into the backyard, our hearts thumping against our chests. The tapping had ceased, replaced by a stillness that seemed to envelop everything. We scanned the area, our lights cutting through the darkness, revealing nothing but the familiar elements of Alex's garden. That was until we noticed the footprints. A set of muddy impressions that led from the woods to the house and back again. They were too large to belong to any animal, and the realization that someone had been out here, watching us, sent chills down my spine. We rushed back inside, locking the door behind us. Panic set in as we debated what to do next. Calling the police seemed like the obvious choice, but the fear of getting in trouble for being up and about at such a late hour held us back. The night passed in a blur of fear and anxiety. None of us slept, jumping at every sound, every creak of the house settling. By the time morning came, we were exhausted, our nerves frayed. As we stepped outside, the sunlight doing little to dispel the unease that had taken root in our hearts, we found a tattered, old doll lying on the doorstep. Its glassy eyes stared up at us, and for a moment, it felt as if it was looking right into our souls. We were left to wonder, was this a message? A prank? Or something far more sinister? The sleepover ended shortly after. We packed up our things, our desire for adventure replaced by a longing for the safety and normalcy of our own homes. We never spoke of that night again, not really. It became one of those shared experiences that we all silently agreed to forget. But the memory of it, the fear, the realization that we were not alone, that something had been watching us, has stayed with me. It's a reminder that sometimes, the monsters we fear in the dark are not just figments of our imagination. Sometimes, they're real, and closer than we think. As for the doll, we never did find out where it came from. Alex's parents didn't recognize it, and no one in the neighborhood claimed it. It remained, much like the events of that night, an unsettling mystery, a memento of the time when our youthful daring brought us face to face with the unknown. It was November 2019, and I had just wrapped up an intense period of work, desperately needing a weekend of rest to relax and rejuvenate. My good friend Mark, aware of my need, invited me to spend the weekend at his country villa. Mark's family had a long history in the small town, and their villa was a century-old house nestled in a vast field, surrounded by lush forests, a world away from the city's noise and pollution. Driving through winding country roads, I admired the beautiful scenery outside my window. As the sun slowly sank, the sky shifted from blue to deep purple, eventually swallowed by the night. Arriving at Mark's villa after dark, I was warmly greeted by him and his family, who waited at the door with a dimly lit lantern, illuminating my path to the house. Mark's villa was a classic country-style building, constructed of light yellow brick with a moss-covered roof, exuding an aura of antiquity and warmth. The interior was simple and comfortable, with a faint scent of wood emanating from the furniture. My stay was peaceful and pleasant, spending days walking in the fields and nights immersed in books in the study. However, the tranquility was shattered on the first night. Turning off the TV and preparing to head upstairs to rest, I heard a knocking from behind the house. Initially, I thought it was just branches swaying in the wind, but as the knocking grew more regular, I realized it was no natural occurrence. Cautiously, I went downstairs, crossed the living room, and approached the back door. Each step creaked underfoot, heightening my anxiety. Opening the door, a chill breeze greeted me, with nothing but swaying tree shadows in the night. Surveying the surroundings for the source of the noise, I found only silence. Deciding to check around the house again, I donned my jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped outside. The villa's backyard was encircled by dense shrubbery, through which I carefully navigated, my flashlight's beam feeble in the darkness. The knocking seemed to cease as I approached, only to resume as I moved away. Moving along the house's exterior, I searched for any signs of abnormality. Reaching the side of the house, I noticed fresh scrape marks on the back door handle, tightening my chest with the realization that someone might have attempted to enter. Fortunately, the lock was intact, untouched by tampering. Returning inside, I secured all doors and windows, filled with unease. Attempting to seek comfort, I tried calling Mark, but received no answer. I decided to stay vigilant throughout the night. As time ticked by, I sat restlessly on the living room sofa, turning on all the lights and using the TV to fend off fear. However, just as I began to relax, I heard faint footsteps from another part of the house. My heart raced, and I gripped my flashlight, ready to investigate once more. Moving stealthily towards the source, I approached the study door, where I saw a shadow flicker past the window. Holding my breath, I slowly approached, trying to identify the figure. But as I was about to get a clear view, the shadow vanished. Realizing the intruder might be hiding inside, I decided to return to the living room to call the police. Just then, I heard keys in the front door lock. Shocked, I realized the intruder might have found a way in. I quickly hid in a small storage closet under the stairs, closing the door with just a crack open to watch. The front door opened, followed by echoing footsteps in the living room. Heart pounding, I watched as a figure in a black hoodie, face obscured by shadow, entered and looked around. Recognizing the need for escape, I seized the moment when distant police sirens sounded, startling the intruder who then ran towards the door. I burst from my hiding spot, screaming for help through the living room window. The police arrived quickly, arresting the stranger, who turned out to be a local thief known for targeting unoccupied homes. He had learned of the temporary absence of Mark's family through observation. After explaining the ordeal to the police, who commended my calmness and bravery, Mark's family, upon hearing of the incident, rushed back and expressed deep gratitude, immediately considering an upgrade to their security system. This experience profoundly taught me the importance of safety, whether in the city or the countryside. I began learning self-defense and advised Mark on better security measures. Keeping calm and brave in emergencies became a vital realization. Though terrifying, this episode taught me how to protect myself and cherish peaceful, secure living. Now, reflecting on that night doesn't bring fear but pride, knowing I can protect myself and those I care about against any challenge. It became a valuable life lesson, making me appreciate the time with family and friends even more and the preciousness of every peaceful moment.